Hello and welcome to Two Words Wolves Pod. I'm Ryan Eichten and with me is Leo Sun. Leo, how you doing?
I am existing, Ryan. It's been a wild week, obviously, for you and the rest of Minnesota, Minneapolis, greater area community over there. And there happened to be some basketball that was played today. I tried to watch it. It felt weird. It was a Sunday daytime game for me over here at 2:30 tip. So everything felt weird. So I, too, feel a little bit weird right now sitting here podcasting. See if we're going to talk about a little bit of basketball, but mostly just more about what do we actually see today from the Minnesota Timberwolves as a whole?
Yeah, and I guess right off the top, I'll just kind of state that there's not going to be a ton of basketball talk in this episode. If that's, I guess, not your thing, feel free to not listen. I implore you. I would like people to listen, and this is stuff I think important stuff to talk about. But certainly, if you're not in the mental headspace to right now think about this sort of stuff, you can pause right here and come back. Certainly, taking time for ourselves is just as important as everything else. But yeah, this weekend was another extraordinarily tough one in Minneapolis on Saturday morning. I'm sure a lot of people, everyone is aware, another person in Minneapolis was shot and killed by federal officials. Alex Preddy, an ICU nurse, on Saturday morning. Again, a lot of what we said when Renee Good was murdered applies here. I believe that was 2 episodes ago for Leo and I. So you can go back to listen to that one. That episode would have came out January 9th or 10th, I believe. So if people want kind of our breakdown, especially of that incident, a lot of it applies here even more strongly. No one deserves to lose their life over this. I'm not someone that's going to both sides of it. I believe the problem, it lies with the immigration enforcement and the ICE people. They are causing havoc in our city. It's really scary. But even setting that aside, no one deserves to lose their life over this. But what unfolded after that, it's been a really tough time in this city. I guess I don't technically live in Minneapolis. I probably should say I live in a suburb north of Minneapolis. But obviously the Twin Cities is where I've lived pretty much all my life. It's been really tough, and just to see another person lose their life is really tough. The day before was really cool to see 50,000, I think was the estimate, people take to downtown Minneapolis that in a march that ended at Target Center, where local officials and immigrants shared their stories about what's been going on. But then what happened Saturday morning, and another loss of life, 2 in the span of 2 weeks, is just horrifying. And then I guess from the Timberwolves side of it, they correctly did not play that night. I think that was the correct decision to not play basketball that game that night. They played tonight. They got blown out. I don't even have the final score ahead of me. I wasn't watching the game in the last few minutes, but easy to say in retrospect, but I think I would have said this morning. I don't think that the game should have been played tonight either. I felt that way 2 weeks ago with the game against Renee Good, and I will have the caveat I said then, which was, I know that's easy for me to say. I understand there's a lot of logistics behind that. I know these two teams play tomorrow. Should that game? I don't know. I'm admitting that I don't have a good answer to this. And it's easy for me to say, watching that game, it was the building was not in the right mood. Basically everyone there, fans, players. I mean, the fans, obviously the Wolves got blitzed basically from the beginning. So that it is what that is. But even if the Wolves were winning, I don't think the crowd would have been properly in it, just because of everything that's been going on. So the Wolves played a day later, 24 hours later. Exactly. They'll play Golden State again on Monday. It's hard to, we'll continue to break down. I have a bunch of clips from pregame and postgame, but before we kind of dive into the meat of everything, Leo, I just wanted to get your thoughts from someone not currently in Minnesota.
Yeah, Ryan, it's hard for me to be like, I know how you feel about it because living in it, I mean, it's been happening here in the LA area, which is kind of where I'm closer to. Starting as of last summer is really where it picked up, and it's still been ongoing, but obviously not to the degree that's going right now. I mean, experiencing two cold-blooded murders by ICE agents that have been going on. Well, two very mainstream ones. I mean, there are plenty of others as well that have happened to other, especially people of color, that have not been uh, talked about so much. And so it's really rough. I mean, I think it's one thing. I mean, my 2 cents about it, Ryan, is that as far as the game getting canceled on Saturday, you and I both agree like that was the right thing to do. And I think the Wolves got a little bit lucky in that when they did play after the murder of Renee Good, they played the Bucks, and we're like, they really shouldn't have played that game. Played it anyways. They won by a lot, and it was kind of could be chalked up as like, oh well, the Wolves did what they could to make the community feel better by playing hard, playing together, giving them a reason to cheer and to be happy and to come together, right? So they kind of got a free pass at that. And I'm not saying that was the right decision, but that's kind of what happened. And now today, well, as we're recording this on Sunday night, they play the Warriors absolutely, lay an egg. And it's not to say that, okay, well, the Wolves haven't been capable of laying eggs before. I mean, it's happened throughout the season. But how I feel about this, that it's okay if you're the Timberwolves and you're just like mentally and emotionally not ready to play. Maybe you are affecting your player and you're really affected by what's going on in your community, wherever the case is. That's reasonable. I totally get that. But what cannot be reasonable to me is choosing to be silent about everything that's going on and not using your platform as a player. Now, it's one thing if, okay, well, the game was canceled on Saturday. You have an entire day now where it's like, okay, well, you know why the game was canceled. The game was canceled because it was one, unsafe conditions to get out there because of all the ICE agents and all the, chaos that they're causing out there, but it's also because there was a murder that just happened, on the street. So you know what happened, right? So if you know what happened and 24 hours later you still have not said anything, we've heard from players outside of the Timberwolves organization. Like Tyrese Halliburton has spoken up about it on social media. Karl Anthony Towns put out a statement about it. You have Brianna Stewart speaking up about it on Unrivaled and with the Abolish ICE sign that she kind of had as well too. So people are speaking up about it, but other than perhaps Jalen Clark, who posted on his story about like, oh, like, no, this is crazy, or like whatever the case was about that murder, it's been pretty much radio silent. And I'm not saying that players have to mourn or struggle in public and be a martyr for everyone to see, but you're a hero to millions of, let's just say, kids and fans or teenagers, whatever, or even adults that are rightfully terrified by what's going on right now. And I'm sorry to say, if I was a kid in Minneapolis growing up right now, I honestly would not care to hear what the mayor has to say, what Tim Walz has to say. Those are not my heroes. I'm like, oh, that's just some old guy that runs like, the city, or he has a lot of power. I don't know who that is, some guy in a suit. I want to hear from who I care about, which would be my favorite basketball players or my favorite actors or my favorite artists. I'm not saying it is their responsibility to have to say that, but you do have a platform and opportunity to help others by doing that. And so you can't say that, oh, it was tough to play because things were weird in the arena, the energy was off in the community, whatever the case is, but then also be silent at the same time. Uh, Obviously, there were some comments that were made after the game. Once, Ryan, you were at the game covering, you were in the locker room, you were doing the post and pregame media. So, you guys were able to ask some questions and get some responses from it, but they're quite literally the last people that we're hearing from, in terms of the organization. The Players Association has said something. You have people from other sports and other organizations from other worlds that are saying stuff about this. Yet the professional basketball team that plays in the arena where the entire hundreds of thousands of people protest on Friday ended yesterday did not say anything until after the game when they were specifically asked. So that's kind of my 2 cents about it, Ryan. Now I know you probably have a lot of thoughts. What were some of the things that you heard before and after the game from all sides?
Yeah, I, like you, um would have preferred more before tonight, like more communication from the team or their organization, or especially the players, about like what kind of support they can give. And I guess I fully understand not wanting to put yourself out there publicly against an administration that um you would fear retribution against. I totally understand that. Um I just think, like you, I think it's important for, like, these guys they have a platform that could really help. And it's not, even setting that aside, like I think there's a way. Let me read Carl Anthony Towns' statement. I think this is kind of, there's a way to support the Minneapolis community, and can basically condemn what has been going on without directly targeting ICE or Trump. There to me, there's a way to do it where you're trying to uplift a community that's really going through a lot, one that the current Timberwolves players are in, and one that is still important from Cat. So here's what Carl Anthony Towns tweeted out. Looks like 6:04 Central. So this was ended up being halftime, third quarter of the Wolves game. And I guess it was happenstance that the Wolves were playing at the time, more or less. This is just when Carl ended up tweeting about the situation. What is happening in the Twin Cities and the great North Star State is heartbreaking to witness. These events have cost lives and shaken families, and we must call for accountability, transparency, and protections for all people. This moment demands that we reflect honestly on what our values truly are. My thoughts, prayers, and deepest condolences are with the families of Renee Good and Alex Prady. I stand with the people of Minnesota. That's an awesome statement to me. It highlights everything that's been going on. It stands with the people of Minnesota and gives out what needs to change. And it does so if, like all of us, I think rightfully, myself included, like would fear coming out strongly against like, I mean, look at the violence that's been going on. Retaliation, I think, would be something you'd be afraid of. I think there's a way to do it right there. Certainly, like continuing to protest peacefully is an incredibly important thing as well. So you don't want to say something that would rile people up. Obviously, I just really appreciate what Kat tweeted out, and we'll play what Chris Finch, what Steve Kerr, the Warriors coach, we will play all of them. But I guess what did you think about what Kat sent out?
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising at all in a good way. And that Kat has always been a person that has not been afraid to speak up, whether it's about what's going on during the pandemic with Black Lives Matter, and all the murders that have gone on during that time or before that time even. He's always spoken to champion efforts for social justice and human rights. And so, yeah, I'm grateful to see that he's willing to post about that. And at the same time, I also feel, deeper frustration with like, we don't have a player like him or Josh Okogie or whoever that is, willing to put themselves, on the line of fire, not fearing that. I mean, low hanging fruit comparison here is you look at the Minnesota Lynx with, Maya Moore, Rebecca Brunson, who Rebecca had a great, monologue at the beginning of the game, prior to the game, the pregame show. Simone Augustus, they wore these change starts with us. On the back, it has, Philando Castile, Alton Sterling, Black Lives Matter, 2016, right? Way before the, Black Lives Matter movement of 2020. And when they did that, the police union was upset by it and they left the game. They literally were supposed to be working security as the game and they left the game. And that Minnesota Lynx team, I mean, this was like peak dynasty Lynx. I mean, this wasn't just some like, oh, well, no one really cares about us, whatever. It's like, they could have cared about, oh, well, we're trying to win another championship. We have goals. Like, no, they didn't care about the backlash of them leaving, how people would label them. They did what was right. And I wish that more of the Minnesota Timberwolves players, even the organization in general, which, again, owned by the same owners, well, technically not from 2016, but now the same people own the Lynx that own the Timberwolves, that they would take more of a stance and be more unafraid to do what is right and say what is right. And so, there's players I would have figured like, a Mike Connolly, who's, a veteran that's always been known as a community member, speak up about it. I know there was the thing going around that Joe Ingles talked with Steve Kerr, before the game was canceled yesterday, and they both felt like that was the right thing to do. So, I mean, that's good. But I need more than that. Ryan, I saw a thing today, and I don't mean to go too far off topic here, but I saw a video of, I think it was a Minnesota National Guard, and they were wearing vests, and they were handing out hot chocolate and donuts to anti-ICE protesters this morning. And I was, people were like, oh, this is great. This is great. And again, like, it's not a bad thing. So let me start with that. It's not a bad thing they're doing that. But like, I expect so much more than that. Like, yeah, there's already people handing out coffee and donuts and treats. Like, go help. go do the right, go help the people that need help on the front lines, provide medical assistance, do something more with your power as a Minnesota National Guard than just handing out donuts. And again, I'm not saying it's bad they're doing that, but I want to see more. And same thing with the Timberwolves. Like, it's great that they had some comments and blah 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 blah, but I need to see more than that. And again, it all goes back to, like, where's the leadership kind of coming from on it. And so, I liked, some of the things that Chris Finch kind of struck a chord with, in his statements. I think we'll talk about it a little bit soon, but yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents. Glad to hear from Kat always, though.
Yeah, I guess we'll play all the reactions. The lack of response prior to now, I would describe it as disappointing. And it honestly, maybe what is a way to put it is, certainly there's a lot of disappointment and other adjectives to describe what's going on. This is if any feelings about lack of, like, toward the Timberwolves, I think would, like, be in a certain way misguided anger, right? It's not ultimately who we're frustrated with, who we're angry with. I would just describe it as it's just a bummer. It's a bummer that, even if it's, whether it's they feel like they can't, whether they actually can't, all the reasons. It's just a bummer. And I am trying to be fair to players, because I know I mean, I'm doing it right this second. Like, I'm trying to say the right things. I'm trying to not put myself in danger, right? There's a lot of going on. And so at the very least, it's a bummer that we haven't gotten more said about the situation from the Wolves players. But I guess tonight we did. And so we'll talk about that. Going back to, I thought what happened Friday was really cool. 50,000 people, again, the estimate, were out there in the streets of Minneapolis. I know, maybe, like, for me, knowing kind of like the general layout of downtown, that gave me, if you go look at the pictures, like, a lot of those are, like, not the same block. So, like, when you see all those people, it's like you can kind of get a scale of it when you see, like, how many different blocks. There was a lot of people there, and it was cold. It was, I think, -15 at times out there. Plus, it was windy. Obviously, it does help when there's a lot of people around. Like, that cuts the wind and the body heat, all that. But, like, that was really cool to see. And I think that's maybe my message, is, like, I think, like good will win out here. I believe that. I think the people of Minnesota, the good people of Minnesota, a community that is special and important, and that I would recommend people move to if they were, like, thinking about that. I would recommend Minneapolis in the Twin Cities. Just sort of see everyone out there fighting, not fighting, but voicing their opinion, was really cool. I'm proud of my city for what it's trying to do for it's not just Minneapolis. St. Paul's been hit, the suburbs have been hit, but obviously Minneapolis is the main one. Yeah, it's been hard, but there's been moments of pride, and I think just continuing to protest peacefully, because there's nothing, when you're met with violence, when you're peacefully protesting, it just continues to show the absurdity of what is going on when you're just being brutally attacked for these people trying to live their lives. So, let's move into discussing what happened on Sunday night at the game. Here's Chris Finch talking about what has gone down and his reaction.
Excuse me. For the second time in less than 3 weeks, we've lost another beloved member of our community, in the most unimaginable way. As an organization, we are heartbroken for what we are having to witness and endure and watch, and we just want to extend our thoughts, prayers, and concern for Mr. Preti, family, all the loved ones, and everyone involved in such a unconscionable situation in a community that we really love, full of people who are by nature peaceful, and prideful, and we just stand in support of our great community here, And also I'd like to extend my, I guess, I'd like to extend to the leadership, Adam Silver, Matt Caldwell, Tim Connolly, and the Golden State Warriors, our thanks for the decision yesterday, because playing basketball just didn't feel like the right thing to do. And hopefully we can play today, move forward, but we feel like we got a lot of work to do. So thank you very much.
So you can obviously hear Finch's emotion in his voice. I thought, again, we're not gonna kind of go play by play breakdown on each each person's response. But I do want to play everyone. Finch did. That was his response. His statement came before, like he opened his press conference with that, and then there was questions after that, based on basketball stuff, and as well breaking down more of what happened this weekend. And then I did want to play what Steve Kerr had to say as well, before the game.
I've been following everything. It's very sad. This has always been a great stop on the NBA tour. I love the city of Minneapolis. The people here are wonderful, and it's very sad what's happening. I feel for the city. There's a pall that has been cast over the city. You can feel it, and a lot of people are suffering. Obviously, loss of life is the number one concern. Those families will never get their family members back, and when all the unrest settles down, whatever that is, those family members won't be returning home, and that's devastating.
Two statements from the coaches before the game. Again, same with Finch. Kerr received more questions, both basketball questions, like they talked about. Steph Curry ended up playing; he was questionable before the game. Questions like that, along with questions about the tragedy over the weekend, and that juxtaposition was there the entire night, the entire game. It was like you try to focus on the basketball and you're reminded of what happened. And like I already mentioned, it's easy to say now. Would have been better off, I think, with this game moved somewhere else, but that's a tough decision to make. And it was really nice. It was really good to hear from both of those two coaches about just trying to give support, even in a helpless situation, for a community that's hurting. But the basketball was just, obviously the Wolves lost by 1 billion points, and it'd be naive to think that what's been going on played no effect. Of course, it played some effect. And like what Kerr said, like a pall being held over, and he talked after the game. I don't have the clip, but he talked after the game of it just being one of the saddest NBA arenas he'd been in, just during a game. And I would probably echo that too. It's hard to put into words. Like, again, the crowd wasn't going to cheer because the Wolves obviously were getting blown out, but it was a difficult game, for everyone. But kind of like I said earlier, I don't think it's probably misguided to blame the NBA, to blame any of the coaches or whatever. Like, unfortunately, multiple people now and have lost their life, and that fact is what is causing all of this pain and our inability to really even focus on basketball.
Yeah, I'm glad that we were able to hear from them before the game, obviously, and that they were able to speak so candidly about it, especially with Finch. Finch has always kind of struck me as a cool customer type of dude where we've seen him get riled up in games with the refs and things like that, maybe riled up at his own team, but very rarely do we see it kind of in the open public in front of the media eye, of how he feels about certain things, especially off the court, and the fact that he seems so, like you said, if you watch the video, it looks like damn near tears about to come down his eyes. He's very emotional when talking about it, and I'm really glad to see. He is not someone that is a native Minnesotan. He's been here obviously for 5+ years now ish, and the fact that he takes it so seriously, I mean, I would hope that, it's the beginning of dialogue, for the rest of the team, to kind of a gateway for them to speak openly about it too. And as we'll get into soon on this episode. Unfortunately, that's probably the highlight in terms of statements made by anyone from that we heard from today, in terms of openly talking about how they feel about it and allowing themselves to kind of show that like they care about this. And yeah, I mean, like the game itself, like you said, it was a blowout. Really not much life to it. I mean, there's a little bit of excitement at the end of the second quarter where the Wolves kind of fought back, but again, that was just like a brief. It was almost seemed like an accident, that they kind of played well for a little bit more than actually like real basketball being played. And so, they're supposed to play again tomorrow, right? Or if you're listening to this, playing again today on Monday. And I don't know what is going to be much different than maybe Steph Curry resting, so the Warriors just don't have enough players to really put out there. And I can't imagine going to a Wolves game, in Minneapolis right now with like, all right, let me get my best fit together. I want to make sure I try and get an autograph from someone. Like, I just want to, like cosplaying like normal life at a game just feels so weird to me. Like, I applaud you, Ryan, for, driving out to the game and trying to do your due diligence, not just to cover the game, but to try and get more from the coaches and players, and to talk about the atmosphere and, what it felt like for the fans and the general vibe of the game, because you put yourself in danger going out there, and obviously this is very close to home for you. Like, I can imagine if that was going on here in my local city where I'm living here in SoCal, I probably wouldn't be going into work, to be honest. I mean, not that I have the financial freedom to not go in, but it would take a lot to pull me in to voluntarily go into to doing something like this. I mean, Ryan and I, we do this, and it's out of as you say, love of the game and love of the sport. But there's times like this, that it's bigger than the sport, that we hold a responsibility to go out there and like, hey, like Ryan feels a responsibility to go out there and to do what is right and to ask the question that needs to be asked that's within his bounds, and for Ryan and I both to write about it on Canis Hoopus and to share those thoughts and use whatever small platform we have in comparison to talk about that. And so yeah, that's where I think that frustration, like you said, yeah, it's misguided frustration, because we know who we're really angry at. And at the end of the day, it's the administration and, Department of Homeland Security and all of them. That's who we're mad at. But again, it's like, well, we want more allies on our side in this fight, which is, in an ideal world, the Minnesota Timberwolves would be great allies to have in this. So yeah, it was I'm sure a weird environment to be in there.
Yeah, I'm going to take a kind of an idea from Jim Suhan, who wrote a column based on everything that's been going on. I'll recommend people read that. But it's just kind of the absurdity of a lot of people locally don't feel like they can leave their house. Like, a lot of people are kind of stuck at home because they don't want to encounter ice, that they feel like they are at risk of being of anything, of being shot and killed, of being abducted, of being who knows. And so it's a little bit absurd to, like, it feels that way to go to a sporting event when not everyone in the community feels like they have the freedom to do that right now. So that's the really tough part. But yeah, like I mentioned, the game itself was really tough. Wolves got blown out on a normal night. We would come in here and just start like reaming into them about a terrible performance. I don't think that is fair to do. Obviously, I think like what happened tonight requires nuance. Especially like the fifth loss in a row. Like, if they had this was a normal night, there'd be a lot of talk about the game, and we'll get there. But I think it's fair to, like, excuse it is the wrong word, but like there's an explanation there at the very least. And so I do want to play a couple of the players. Both Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards were asked if they had a message for the community. So I will play that now.
Julius, you've talked quite a bit about how much the community and city here have meant to you. Just everything going on, would you be comfortable kind of sharing about how this has affected you?
Yeah, like I said, regardless of, politics, everything, there's a human aspect to it. And for me, I have kids, I have family, and for me, a job as a man is to be a protector of the house. And when you see things like that, obviously it's tough. you know, and it's hard to stomach those things. You know, I'm not political at all. I don't get in any of that stuff. But like I said, it's tough. Regardless of whatever is going on, somebody lose their life. You never want to see that, you know. And you know, like I said, from the minute I've been here, Minneapolis has been great to me. You know, the fans, the community have been really behind me. Everyone, you know, neighbors that I live, community I live in, the school my son goes to, just everything, you know, it's been nothing but a joy living here. So things like this happening in the community is tough. And, you know, I don't like seeing it for sure.
All right. So that is what Randall had to say about the situation and what happened at the game tonight. Next is what Ant had to say, which I will provide further context with after we hear what Ant said.
Man, I just love Minnesota. All the love and support that they show me, so I'm behind with whatever they would. And I don't really have social media, so I'm not, in tune with everything. But I've heard about the stuff that's going on, so me and my family definitely praying for everybody. All
right, so I think that clip about Ant has been circulating online. I posted it on Blue Sky. Andrew Dukowitz and Dane Moore both, I think, posted it on their social media. So I think a lot of people have seen that clip. I think an important context for that clip is needed because I think it's important. Anthony Edwards, through Wolves PR, declined to talk about the shooting on Saturday. Or let me rephrase. He declined to talk about Anthony Edwards declined to talk about the shooting that occurred on Saturday after the game. He said that through Wolves PR, who took aside certain media members to let them know that Ant will be speaking to the media post-game, but it will be he will not be discussing that aspect of what is going on. Andrew Dukowitz for Zone Coverage did not know that, and he asked the question, just asking Ant for if he had a message for the community, which he asked that not knowing that Ant didn't want to talk about the shooting, and I would probably, and what I think after the game, like, he didn't end up asking about the shooting, he asked about the community, so it all ended up fine. But I just think it's important context to let people know that Ant did decline to talk about the shooting. He did give a message to community there, which we can talk about. But what I'll say it is Ant's right as an employee of the Wolves, as an American. He does not have to comment on this stuff. Like, that's his right. We have the same right as media members, as fellow Americans, to voice our opinion based on that. And in this case, I think that warrants criticism from Ant, that he was not willing to talk about what happened. And if it was, I think if he would have been unwilling to talk about, like, literally, like, the actual, like, the play-by-play of the shooting, like, I get that. Like, and if you're not willing to, like, we already mentioned this, condemn the administration, like, I get that too. But to kind of be unwilling to talk about anything that was happening in that realm, and I think if, like, the only reason the question got asked was because one person was not privy to the memo that Ant didn't want to talk about it. I think that, going back to what I said, that's a real bummer that the leader of this team was not willing to talk about it. I think the statement he did give as well about the community, I think, also deserves criticism. His comment about not having social media, to me, rings a bit hollow. I'm not sure what that means in this context. I'm not, like, I guess he didn't see everything that's going on, but he also said he's aware of the situation. So I guess in this context, I'm not sure what that means. I guess to be fair to him, he was not expecting this question. So maybe that, you could, if he were willing to, like, re-give a statement, maybe he would correct that. So I guess in that sense, it'd be, to be fair to him, he was not necessarily expecting a question based on this, but I think at the very least he could have had something more substantial about the fans that root for him, the people that care about him, and I just didn't think he lived up to that moment. One that I will say the players were aware before the game that media would be asking about this. This is not a situation where they were surprised by what we were asking. That was part of the reason they were not asked prior, is people rightly did not want to like ambush them with questions necessarily. And they've been part of that is they've been on the road for a while and there hasn't been as much media on the road. So, but yeah, like I said, this is not a situation where they were taken off guard. They had time, they had opportunities to craft either a statement or just be ready like even what Julius said, which I'm not personally the biggest fan of like bringing politics into it, because I kind of in a lot of ways don't feel like the politics matter. Like I think what happened is awful, kind of regardless of who you voted for or are going to vote for in the years to come. But even Julius, I think, was willing to like say like I'm a father, like it's important to me to protect my people, and like this threatens that. Or I mean, I don't need to paraphrase what he said. I just played the clip, but yeah, I think it's fair to say that Ant's quote did not live up to what I think people should expect of him. And I think not every player has to be like a freedom fighter or whatever. Like, I think if Ant just wants to be a basketball player, it's not to make Ant come out as a bad person. Like, right. I'm not even like defending him or whatever. Like, I don't know. I'm having trouble really giving my true thoughts here, not for any other reason that it's a tough situation, but I think it's fair for people to be disappointed on the lack of statement from Anthony Edwards, while also I want to kind of give the context again. Ant declined to talk about the shooting itself. The reason why the situation and really the events of the weekend, that is my understanding, is he did not want to talk about that. And that was not properly communicated to every member of the media. And so he was asked about his message to the community. And so I guess, again, to just explain the whole situation, if Ant in that kind of Ant was not expecting to talk about it, so maybe it's unfair to him to like parse his words on what he said. But I think even if he wasn't asked the question, I think that would have warranted criticism too, of not being willing to talk about a really tough situation for a lot of people, a lot of fans that come to support Anthony Edwards at what he does. Obviously, I guess what lingers over all of this is like it is a business. Obviously, the Timberwolves, the NBA is a business. But I just think it's a bummer that he wasn't able to give a better statement, especially when like they did have time to prepare for it, while also admitting like it's a tough situation for all of us. So it's far from like a unforgivable situation or whatever. Just, yeah, a bummer.
Yeah, I think something you were saying there at the end kind of struck a chord with me when you're saying like at the end of the day, it's a business, right? The NBA is a business, and so is, these players have a brand, and they have a business that they're trying to keep a certain image about and not lose certain sponsorships or support from certain populations or whatever. I remember I used to think like, oh well, I love the Timberwolves, like that's my favorite basketball team because they're a good organization. And then the more I grew up and the more I learned about maybe the politics of Glenn Taylor or this, that, or the other, or even just learning about the NBA at large, and the more I realized like, well, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, their goal is to make money off of us, right? And so I remember at some point, it was maybe like 10 years ago or something, 7 to 10 years ago, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I love the Timberwolves, but I think it's more important. I'm starting to understand people who are fans who are fans of players, not organizations, because like players can stand for things. Players, like, yes, they want your support, buy their merch or whatever. They have a brand, they're sponsored by their shoes. But at the end of the day, they stand for stuff. They care about stuff, and you would like to think they care about you a little more. And I think at some point you kind of learn, like, well, some of these players maybe don't view it that way, that they view themselves more as a business, and maybe it's not them. Maybe it's their managers, maybe it's their PR people that are instructing them what they should or should not talk about, or like, if you do talk about it, this is what you should be saying, right? And so, I think we credit so much, and my surprise, I don't want to say surprise with Ant's answer, because I know if we had to put players into buckets, Ant will fall into that bucket of like, I just want to hoop and go home, right? Like, he's one of those guys. He's not like, oh, I want to hoop and change the world and this, that, or the other. Like, that's not necessarily him. That I personally would put him in. But at the end of the day, he's a guy who always seemed to be pretty emotionally intelligent. He knows, like, on the court, if you talk about the example of when Kat and Jimmy, they had their thing, and Ant kind of jumped in there, was like, no, like, we're not doing that. Like, it's just, we were just playing basketball. There's just two men having a conversation. He's smart. He understands. He's gone through a lot of personal, hardships in his life. He understands what's going on, what people can be feeling. And so that's why I'm like, damn, like, Ant may have had a good shooting night on the court, but he really missed a shot that really counted. I know that sounds really maybe corny or whatever, and that's fine. But that was the one. Like, I was more curious about, what is he going to say if and when he's asked. And like you said, he didn't even want to take the shot. He didn't even want to take the shot. He was accidentally given the ball to take the shot as the shot clock was going down, and he just kind of airballed that. And I agree with you. I also just felt like it really rang on, like, well, I'm not on social media, so I don't really know. I mean, so essentially, is he saying, I don't know what happened? Is that what he's saying? Or is he saying, I don't know what people's reactions are to it? I mean, like, again, such low hanging fruit where, like you said, Julius and, any other players that speak up, anyone that speaks up can very easily kind of, I don't want to say ride the fence, but say at least a general sentiment, like how you was asked, what is your message to the community? And, if I was actually part of, like, living in Minneapolis, going through like the terrors that y'all are going through every single day right now and every single night, I'd kind of be like, damn, like, that's all you got, So yeah, that was very, very frustrating. But I think almost just as disappointing is kind of like, I mean, was I going to expect something more from him? Yes, part of me wished, but I think my head was like, that seems about right for him, unfortunately. I mean, we know some of the problematic comments he's made in the past about other issues that are very concerning to their own right, about, trans community and that type of stuff, or just about people's identities in general. And so we don't need to get into a whole thing about that. Again, I love Anthony Edwards as a basketball player. I want to like him as a human being as well too. It's just times like this where I feel like if I was a little kid watching that, I'd be a little let down.
Yeah, something I've been feeling, and this almost has less to do with individual players or the situation with Ant. This is something I've been feeling for a while, is that there's kind of this unspoken agreement between sports teams and their fans that, like, we are the sports team is more than just like another Fortune 500 company, right? Like, to think of a couple local Minnesota ones, like, there's a difference between like the Wolves and say Target, Best Buy, 3M, like these type of companies, which can, like, it's not to say those companies can't like work in the community too, but like there's this unwritten agreement that, like, we obviously like profits are important to these companies, to like the Timberwolves, right? Like, we all understand this, but like there's this agreement that, like, we're more than that as well. Like, we're part of this community with you. Like, it's not just fully about business. And that goes on the court too. Like, right, there's this, again, they're trying to make money, but like there's this agreement that, like, we're going to try to win games too. And if that means it costs us a little bit extra money, then we're going to go for that. And that part of it, the Wolves have fulfilled. Like, I don't think anyone's really had a problem with their payrolls over the last couple of years. They're in the luxury tax since the team has gotten really good. Like, so that part of it, it's hard to criticize that element, but like, I worry that when, like, if that social contract breaks, where these teams are not seen as members of the community, bastions of like, if they're just kind of turning into these huge Fortune 500 companies where they're kind of going to blow in the wind and follow where the, try not to get themselves in trouble. I think that's going to cost these teams. I really do. I think, like, not just like morally or whatever, but like financially, people will stop rooting for these teams if they feel like people don't have like the same admiration for like Target and Best Buy that they do the Wolves, because of that type of stuff, like that emotional. So if it's just another business, yeah, maybe people will still go to the games occasionally because basketball's fun, but like it won't have the same impact. So I think in stuff like this, and again, I'm almost more trying to talk to like the higher ups of the Wolves, like the ownership it's important to back the community, and clearly the community is not okay with what's happening. And so if it's important to me, if you're running that top team, it's important for the best player on the court to like have a good statement about that. And it doesn't even have to directly it doesn't have to directly go against ICE or the administration. I think you can do it, and Kat showed you can do it, support the community, condemn what happened without directly attacking anyone else. I think that's possible, and I think that's not only possible, I think it's the best way forward. I really do. It's not to say we shouldn't peacefully fight back against what's happening, but ultimately, like, it's going to take everyone to like fight the worst of it.
Yeah, when you're talking about like the bottom line thing, here in Los Angeles, I mean, there's a huge Dodger, fan base here, right?
Mhm.
And a huge part of that Dodger fan base is a Latino community. And when ICE was in full force during the summer, I mean, you saw like the Dodgers had like a really empty response to that. I mean, ICE was posting up
Mhm.
around Dodger Stadium, and that was like a whole thing. And even during the championship parade, there were protests against the Dodgers from Dodger fans saying like, don't go to the parade, don't celebrate this team, like they weren't with us. And like, again, yes, the Dodgers are still making a shit ton of money, and they're still signing players and breaking the league and whatever, but they're losing fans rapidly because of like their lack of response in that. And so again, if the Wolves want to end up like that, then I mean, use that as a lesson. The Wolves aren't winning any championships anytime soon, that's for sure. And so if you want to build your brand and build your fan base and your community up, you have to face these things head on, and not just be like, okay, well, maybe it'll be over next week, let's just get a little win streak and everyone will forget about it. Like, it can't be that. We can't just paper over this and pretend that these players don't have any connection to the community, or this organization doesn't have any connection to the community. There has to be more, in my opinion, on this.
Yeah, it was the right decision not to play that night, but it doesn't solve everything there. Let's transition to actually kind of talking about the game a little bit. Just thinking back on everything we've talked about, I think given all of that, I think it makes sense that they would have a really poor performance, right? Like it's not to excuse it, because like if they take the court, like you got to try to win. But there's just a lot going on. Even if like the statements aren't what we want or whatever, there's just a lot going on. So it's not going to be a type of thing where we really break down the game, because I'm more interested to see if things go smoothly and they play tomorrow night at like with no interruptions. That will kind of be what I'm more interested to see on the court. So like I said, it makes sense why they would lay an egg on this game. It's not to excuse it, but there's an explanation there. Let me play what Dante DiVincenzo said. He gave his thoughts about just the community, but kind of feels like what happened at the game and what happened over the weekend are kind of two separate things.
Yeah, I mean, yes, everybody's, your heart and your thoughts are, with the family going through that tragedy, and but that's not, it's not an excuse. I think, if anything, sometimes that, it brings the community together more, and we need to stay together as a community, as a team, and just push through these rough days, these dark days, because there's a lot more bigger things in basketball, but what we can control right now is our basketball and our energy.
Yeah, so that's kind of an interesting idea that I liked what Dante said there. Is I think it's fair of them if they were feeling it like we are feeling it, that like they just weren't ready to play basketball at this day. I can empathize with that, and we're going to do it right now. Like we're not going to kill them for this performance. It's just not something I feel is fair. But I think what the best thing they can do forward now is to go out and try to win games and try to bring some sort of like in the same like Dante mentioned, in the same way protesters and people, just locals, are trying to get through these dark days. I think the best thing the Wolves can do is try to get through these dark times in terms of their on-court performance and try to rebound from it. Obviously we'd still like them to make like statements about the community, but like just trying to focus on the court for like 5 minutes or whatever. I just think like if you're trying to lift the community, I think maybe that's the best thing you can try to go do, is try to go out and win and try to provide a distraction for people, which I think is just as important. Having a proper distraction, have a proper outlet is as good as, maybe not as good, but is important along with voicing opinions and sticking up for yourself. But I guess before we wrap, like we should talk about like this team has lost 5 in a row. And I think it is separate issues. I think this team has gone through moody stretches for a couple of years now where they just are in their own heads. They kind of did it a couple weeks ago or before the New Year's flip. They were in their own heads and they kind of went on a run from there. And I would imagine they'll start winning games eventually. But I just think, I think they were in a bad headspace regardless of what happened this weekend, and that more exacerbated the issue by a lot. But I still think this team is in a rough place, and they're kind of, it's not fair to them that all of this is happening. Obviously, it's not fair. Certainly not fair to the people of Minnesota either. But like, I don't know. I'm having a hard time even breaking down the game. But 5 losses in a row is troubling, and certainly I know I've talked about the Utah and Chicago performances already. But like, those are unfortunately where you lose your margin of error. You can't drop a game in this circumstances. It's not as easily recovered from because you lost against the Bulls and the Jazz coming into it.
Yeah, I mean, the Wolves turned it over 9 times in the first quarter, most of them by Ant. Some of them his fault, some of them just his teammates' fault for not catching the ball or not being ready for the ball. If that was enough, they threw in 7 more turnovers in the second quarter, and despite them somehow coming back, they started off the third quarter with 4 more turnovers. And it's just, I don't want to say it was a comedy of errors. There's nothing funny about the game, I think, today, other than we got our classic Rob Dillingham low light mixtape at the end of the game again. And the Wolves, I mean, you look at the numbers, I mean, they had 16 assists on 30 field goal makes. So that's almost 1 for every other field goal make was assisted. Meanwhile, look at the Warriors, who are all kinds of beat up, obviously missing Jimmy Butler, but they had 31 assists on 40 field goal attempts. So that's 75% of their field goals, more than 75% that were assisted on. So it's quite crazy to think about the way that the Wolves are playing. They're trying to play so much hero ball. I mean, I think the way that Jaden shot the ball out there today, I mean, he was 1 of 8. He made 1 3. The other 7 shots were inside the arc, especially in the mid-range area. He's kind of used to making those, but if you just look at the way he was shooting, he was very clearly forcing up some tough short-range shots. And I think that was a microcosm of the way the Wolves were playing, was that, Dante hit some threes, but then he started just kind of firing off threes later on. Julius Randle was kind of playing, he was ice cold from deep, but also just not really passing the ball much. I mean, he had 6 assists, which led the team. But again, a lot of his shots came in just like, all right, I'm going to pound the ball at least like 5 or 6 times for going in. And so, yeah, I mean, Ant had a good night shooting the ball 13 of 20, but 8 turnovers. I mean, it was just horrible. And I think the turnovers and this is not the second biggest thing, but the second most annoying thing is the free throws. They were at 12 of 20 today. They missed 8 free throws, 60%. Only 2 of them were in garbage time by Johan Berenger. They missed 6 free throws before that, including 2 by Bones, 2 by Nas. It's just frustrating because, I mean, those are free points you're giving up when you're already playing so bad out there. And so, yeah, there's so many concerning things about the Wolves are playing. Finch talks about it in the post-game presser as well, too, is that they're looking to just kind of do it on their own. They're not playing with the ball and getting everyone involved in the way that they needed to, that the way that they were against, the Bucks and, the Heat and, those games were really crushing their opponents. And so, yeah, I mean, they play them again tomorrow. They say it's hard to beat the same team twice in a row. Well, the Wolves are really going to put that to the test. That's an unmovable object meets the unstoppable force here is, losing to two teams in a row on the back-to-back opportunities there. So, yeah, it was pretty frustrating overall to watch him play. But again, I posted this on Blue Sky right after the game as well too. As I said that even though it was extremely disappointing to see the Wolves on-court performance, I think it's their complete no-show off the court. That's really been even more of a disappointment to me. So it just makes it hard to be a Wolves fan in general. I imagine many other Wolves fans felt that way as well too. And lastly, Ryan, you talked about it's hard to even focus on the basketball of it right now. It feels weird to even, hey, let's dissect a game about basketball when all this chaos is going around. But prior to the Wolves game, I still have been watching the Iowa Wolves, and Rocco Zakarski, had a pretty decent game yesterday on Saturday. And I posted a highlight kind of tape of him. And I put in the start of that post, I said, it feels wrong to post about basketball right now. And then one of my followers, Dan Hilton Music at Blue Sky, he said, keep posting, Leo. It's a relay, not a marathon. Those of us in between one leg of it and the next need our comforting islands of normalcy. And so you're providing essential service. And, I was grateful to hear that. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, do we sit here on our phones or look out our window 24 hours a day and just kind of look at the chaos that's going around us? No, you still have families to feed. You still have a roof to put over your family's head. You have responsibilities out there to do. And the only way to do that is to find some sort of normalcy, whether it's watching a basketball game, for us, you and I, Ryan, talking about basketball, or even for the players to go and play basketball. There has to be some normalcy for sure out there.
Yeah, it's that's kind of all I have about the game. Just because I think one metaphor a friend of mine passed along to me was like a choir holding a long note, and it's like, wow, they can sing for a long time straight. It's like, well, it's not one person. It's if there's 10 people there, nine of them are singing at once while one person grabs their breath, right? And so, as much as it's hard to, I think it's good and okay to try to focus on basketball. But I don't know if tonight was that night, and hopefully Monday. It sounds like Curry might not play on Monday. I will see on that. So we'll see how that goes. But let's finish out with our 2 words. My 2 words are the same 2 words I had 2 weeks ago for everyone, which is stay safe. Unfortunately, we lost another person since I had those 2 words 2 weeks ago. So I hope that 2 weeks from now, not here using these same 2 words, but yeah, stay safe. Continue to make your voice heard peacefully, and we will get through this.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ryan. Feel similarly as well. My 2 words is so tired for both reasons, on and off the court, for the Timberwolves, following the Timberwolves off the court, even just for all of y'all in Minneapolis and even in other states that are going through it as well, to other cities and states that are going through it. As they once said, Mama said there'll be days like this, and it seems like these days are turning into weeks, turning into months over here, and it's okay to feel tired about it. I know I'm tired about it. I cried about it when I woke up Saturday morning and I saw the news about what happened and the homicide, and it takes a toll on me, as I'm sure it does even exponentially more for all you. So it's okay to be tired. It's okay to zonk out a little bit. It's okay to cry. However you deal with it, there's no right way to do it, other than not bringing harm to other people the best that you can. So and compartmentalize, or go to therapy, or talk to people, whatever you need to do. Watch basketball, watch some Ricky Rubio highlights. I know I had to do that a little bit to try and distract myself. Whatever you need to do, it's okay to feel tired and to try and survive right now, because again, it is a long note. It's a marathon, whatever metaphor you want to use. It may be a while, but we can get through it.
Absolutely. Well, that's where we are gonna wrap it up. For Leo, I'm Ryan. Thank you everyone for listening.
Get home and please drive safe.
Go Wolves.
Ayoo!